Welcome to yet another edition of what I watched last month. This is going to be for last month, as in February 2026. I watched some good stuff, some okay stuff as well, and I'm just going to get into it. The first movie that I watched last month is a movie called Life as a House. This movie came out in a post-American Beauty world where every single family drama that was coming out sort of felt like it was a spiritual sequel to American Beauty. It is a movie that is very much of its time, and I would say it's not even a very good representation of its own time. For me, it's an okay movie. It's nothing special. I will say that I think Kevin Kline's performance, as well as Kristen Scott Thomas, I think the two of them are really the reason to watch this movie. And actually rewatching it now has made me kind of want to seek out some more of their performances. But I think the real value that this movie has for me is actually just that this movie is kind of connected to some of my personal memories. It's a movie that I saw at a specific time in my life. I had just started dating this girl in high school, and I was just so excited, I was so happy. And I think in large part that's really it. That's the reason I still will watch this movie from time to time. And it's not like I'm really pining over my past or anything like that. But it's a part of my history. It's part of who I am, and I think it's a good thing to kind of revisit where you've come from and stuff like that. After that, I rewatched Joker. So the reason I decided to rewatch this movie is actually because I have been doing some acting. And it was the night before I had a shoot, and so I thought maybe I'll just watch this movie and watch a really great performance, and then maybe that could inspire me a little bit. But then, I turned it on, I watched the movie, and I just kind of fell in love with it all over again. I am a huge fan of this movie. I've decided I am actually going to do a full review of Joker, and you can expect that video to come out within the next 2 or 3 weeks after this video goes up. I'm a little scared to talk about it because it is a movie that is kind of dicey, It seems like no matter what you say about this movie, somebody is going to get upset with you. But I'm going to do it anyway because, that's what I'm here to do, I'm here to talk about the stuff that I like, and I really like Joker. Okay, and after that, I watched a movie called Election. So this movie really does not fuck around. It is very bold and very confident in what it is doing. I guess the only thing I would say on a personal note about this movie is that I had a hard time connecting to any of the characters. And I think the reason for that is because a lot of the characters in this movie are very exaggerated. They kind of seem like cartoon characters in a way. And while I do recognize that that is the intention, it does kind of make it harder for me to connect with any of them. There is one girl in this movie named Tammy who I did connect with to some degree. She's still kind of cartoonish as well, but she's also just very rebellious. It reminds me a little bit of myself when I was in high school. And she is actually someone that is running in the titular school election of this movie. And she actually does this amazing campaign speech in the middle of this movie. And even though I have been out of high school for 20 years at this point, her speech still really did affect me. You know what I mean? If I was in this movie, I definitely would have voted for Tammy. There is no doubt in my mind about that. I think for me, I just needed a little bit more to connect to in this movie. I still liked it. I still thought it was a very entertaining and enjoyable movie, but I think emotionally it just kind of fell flat for me. Okay, so after that I watched a movie called Filmmaker For Sale. This is a short documentary made by Zaid Aftab, where he kind of documents himself throughout the year of 2025, and it's mostly just the quieter moments of his life that he's documenting. I discovered Zaid through his friendship and collaboration with Joel Haver. Zaid is somewhat of a prominent figure in the folk filmmaking movement, I would say. I thought this movie was very sweet, and Zaid is very open in it. He's very candid. He talks a lot about his workplace, he talks a lot about his filmmaking, and he's basically just sharing his perspective on life as a guy in his mid-20s. I think also Zayd lives in Dubai, and for me it was kind of cool to see what it looks like there. I mean, it's unlikely, I think, that I'm ever going to be able to travel there myself, so that was kind of a cool aspect of the movie. And I think my biggest takeaway from the movie is that, you know, despite the fact that Zayd lives across the world from me, I couldn't help but relate to pretty much everything he was talking about. And it makes me think that our human experience is really just not that different. No matter where you live in the world, we all kind of go through exactly the same stuff. And we all have this like core humanity. And that's really what this movie kind of brought up for me. And it was something that was very nice to see. After that, I watched Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. Okay? So this is definitely the best movie that I watched last month, and I would highly recommend that you all go see it. It's directed by Matt Johnson, who is a Toronto guy, and as a Toronto guy myself, I can tell you that Matt Johnson is he's a bit of an indie filmmaking hero around these parts. This movie incorporates a lot of guerrilla filmmaking, and it's kind of insane, the kind of stuff that they were able to get away with. They also captured these really amazing, like, magical moments with just people on the street, you know, people that they had no idea what was going on, and they had no idea they were being filmed. And I think at the heart of this movie is really just a lot of fun. It is so geeky, but like in all the right ways. There are so many references to pop culture, and it's similar to the web series in that way. It was also just kind of cool to see my own town captured so well, you know, because there are a lot of Toronto landmarks in this movie, and there's also a lot of like Toronto personalities. This movie is really just a smashing success. You know what I mean? It really does not get much better than this, especially when it comes to current day comedies. After that, I watched a movie called The Warped Forest. So this movie is really just a trip. It is basically a visual feast of very dreamy imagery. It is all very lighthearted and very colorful. And also it's just like weirdly sexual in a way that is kind of hard to explain, because people don't really have sex with each other in this movie, but they do have sexual relations with plant life and also alien life. The characters in this movie are capable of doing something called dream tinkering, which is basically when you're able to control what you dream about. And that's mostly what this movie is exploring, but it's also kind of confusing because, you know, the whole movie does sort of feel like it is happening within a dream at the same time. I didn't always understand what was happening in this movie, but I also didn't really mind that. I kind of enjoyed the ambiguities, and I kind of feel like it is a movie that, you know, it doesn't seem like you're supposed to take it all that seriously anyway, and I think it's more so meant to just be a really fun ride, and that's exactly what it was for me. After that, I rewatched The Kid Detective. This movie came out back in 2020 during the height of the pandemic, and at that time it was a real comfort for me, and today it's still the same. It's just it's a movie that I find very comforting. This one is about a guy who sort of peaked in childhood. He was a kid detective. He was someone that would solve mysteries around town, you know. He would figure out who stole candy from the candy store and stuff like that. But now he's kind of just a burnout in his early 30s, you know. He still does run a private investigation firm, but nobody really takes him seriously. Nobody really respects him at this time in his life, and he's kind of become the laughingstock of the town. This movie was shot in a small town called North Bay, which is actually not that far from me. And as someone who sort of longs to live in a small town like North Bay, I really do enjoy watching movies like this because they kind of give me a little peek into what that world might be like. I really enjoy this movie. I would say it's also nothing special, but I do really like it. And just a little fun fact about it is that actually Jay McCarroll of Nirvana the band fame, he did the music for this movie. And the music is just like fucking awesome. It's one of the best parts of the movie. Okay, so after that I rewatched My Own Private Idaho. The story in this movie is loosely based off of Shakespeare's Henry IV. And that is actually my least favorite part about this movie. I'm not a huge Shakespeare fan, and I do think the dialogue in this movie does get kind of overly poetic, at least for my tastes. But I do really like the American flavor of this movie, and I also really like the way that it looks. It's got a 4:3 aspect ratio, and they must have shot it on some pretty cheap camcorders because the whole movie kind of looks pretty scuffed. And I think what I like most about this movie is that it really just seems to be about people kind of living day to day or even just moment to moment. It seems to be somewhat of a directionless movie, you know? There is kind of like a main story, I guess. The main character is trying to find his estranged mother. But when I watch the movie, that part of it doesn't seem any bigger than any other part of the movie to me. To me, it seems the movie is pretty aimless, and by the end of it, there doesn't seem to have been much of a point. I just really appreciate that kind of thing, you know. I think I've said this before, but I just have an appreciation for non-traditional storytelling, I think. And yeah, I love this movie. And after that, I did watch Frankenstein. So, having read the book before, and also as someone who really loves the book, I was kind of looking for something in this movie, which I think was hard for me to kind of get around. Like, I had my own expectations for what I wanted to see. And as I was watching the movie, I could sort of tell that my perception of the story is just very different than Guillermo del Toro's perception of the story. My interpretation of the book is actually just a lot more grounded. Like, it is still a supernatural event that is occurring, but it is something that is happening within reality. And Del Toro, his movie is not like that at all. He makes the whole movie seem very fantastical. It doesn't really seem like it's something that is happening in our world. And still to this day, I would still really love to see a version of this story on the big screen that takes the book a little more seriously, you know, because I think all the fantastical elements that Del Toro put in this movie kind of take a lot of the weight out of the story. You know, once something is not happening in our world, you, as the audience, you don't actually have to wrestle with it as much. You know what I mean? However, I was able to kind of just let go of my own expectations, and I still actually did enjoy the movie for what it was, but I think in the end it is kind of just a classic case. At least for me, it is a classic case of the book being better than the movie. You know what I mean? Okay, so I forgot to talk about one of the movies that I watched, so I'm just going to do that now before I wrap up the video. Also, for whatever reason, I just kind of decided I wanted to do a Dutch angle for this part of the video. So here we are. So the real final movie that I am going to be talking about is called The Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome. So this is a Kenneth Anger movie, and actually I'm not really all that interested in Kenneth Anger as a filmmaker, but I did want to watch this movie because I recently read this book. I read a book called Sex and Rockets, which is a biography on Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons was a very brilliant rocket scientist, but he was also a very well-known member of the occult. He had very close ties with people like Aleister Crowley and also L. Ron Hubbard. So reading that book kind of led me to this movie because Jack Parsons' wife, at least at the time of his death, she plays a role in this movie. This movie is shrouded in occultist imagery, and it makes absolutely no attempt at explaining itself to the viewer. To me, it felt like a movie where you really just have to be in the know if you want to fully appreciate it. Overall, I would say I didn't really like the movie for that reason. There were some provocative images that I kind of liked, but in the end, I would kind of chalk this one up to just being completely inaccessible to me because I am not a member of the occult. But anyway, that is everything that I saw in February. You know, I think I've decided that for this series, I probably am not going to do it every single month. I think having done this a couple of times now, I've sort of realized that I don't actually want to have to talk about every single movie that I watch. You know what I mean? So you can expect to see a video like this from time to time. I do like doing it, but I think I just don't want to do it every single month. But anyway, that's kind of it for today, and I will see you later.